Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today I want to talk about the Battlefield 5 Royale mode. And before we get into things that I think could be really cool about this new take on the genre, let me just say that I get it. There's a lot of controversy around integrating Battle Royale into games these days. 6 months ago, it was all the rage. Now we have some strong Battle Royale games dominating the market, and most people are just sort of thinking, do we really need another Battle Royale right now? Not to mention myself and many others like Battlefield for Conquest or Operations style game modes. Why would we muck things up with a Battle Royale mode competing for attention? Which is a complete divergence from large-scale team tactics. It's basically just using the Battlefield name and setting and then making a completely different experience within that. And in a way, it could even muddy the waters of what we expect and appreciate about the Battlefield franchise. There's already so many Battlefield players that want different things from the franchise. Do we really want to fracture the community even more? Some people like hardcore game modes, some people want rush only, some people want only conquest, some people like to just fly or drive vehicles, some players focus on supporting roles exclusively. There's a huge variety of players usually wanting focus on different parts of Battlefield, so adding in entirely different focuses could certainly be a bad thing. Losing focus of a core gameplay experience is something that I think many AAA games fall victim to as they try to constantly innovate and appeal to an ever-growing market. All that being said, I'm still excited to play Battlefield's new Royale game mode. Not as much as I am to play the classic modes in the new game, but the latest trailer showing that ring of fire closing in around players as both tanks and soldiers converge on each other really got me pumped for what DICE could do with this. I still believe that the Battle Royale genre has yet to produce its masterpiece. I love the game concept and have sunk hundreds of hours into PUBG, but I know that my Battle Royale has not yet been made. A Battle Royale game that puts a bigger emphasis on tactics versus chance. A game that focuses less on environmental kills and no-win situations. One that allows for players to start with firearms and even get dead teammates back by completing in-game tasks. Something that fixes all the things that I personally don't like about current Battle Royales could be the game DICE is making. Everyone seems to be so eager to make a Battle Royale these days that they forget to innovate the franchise in a major way. Too many of them change one or two things. I want one that takes the basic concept but redesigns almost every other element of play. Let's start off by talking about what we do know or can assume from the Gamescom trailer. There is a converging circle system, but instead of some blue or purple force field, it's a wall of fire. In this case, it doesn't look like you can run past the zone. It destroys houses as it moves past them. I am assuming that this will be an instant death situation if players get trapped or try to move outside of the zone. If this is the case, then I'm actually quite happy about this concept. Playing outside the zone has been a major grievance of mine in other Battle Royales, so why not eliminate people's ability to do so? Half of the cheesy tactics are gone right there. It also puts a hard time limit on how long you can last behind cover. If your opponent's cover is being consumed by fire, you'll know exactly when they're forced to engage you, rather than both players getting consumed by the zone and ending up in a mutually assured death situation. The idea in Battle Royale is for one person to come out on top of each firefight, but so often in PUBG or Fortnite, both players end up ensuring the deaths of each other because of the circle damage or inflicting too much damage to each other during the firefight. The fire circle also looks like it's not really moving faster than players can run. So if that is the case universally, then there should be minimal environmental deaths from the zone. This is something I experienced in one of the first iterations of Islands of Nine Battle Royale, where nobody died from the zone and everyone was forced to ultimately firefight. It was one of my favorite updates to the concept as it put a much bigger emphasis on skill versus situation. We also see from the overhead view that although the map appears to be quite large, it's nowhere near the same scale as PUBG. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Scale is all relative at the end of the day. If Battlefield's Royale has 64 players on a smaller map, the action could feel more intense the whole way through. The smaller map also allows for a slower moving zone to avoid those environmental deaths, but still keep the pacing of the game pretty good. Also, based on the burn zone, it looks like the circle might not be converging to a central point, but maybe have different areas where it can end up, similar to PUBG or Fortnite. What would be cool though is if DICE actually constructed some final end zones for the game, so rather than players ending up in an open field where one person has a rock and nobody else does, they could design the zones to be a little bit more balanced so that both players could have some cover. Creating predetermined end zones would be a cool way, I think, to improve the franchise and the end game. Players still wouldn't be able to predict ultimately where the end zone was going to be, but they might have an idea once the circle came down to the final area. Let's talk about what DICE could do for early game choices to spice up the genre. I personally don't care much for the airdrop spawn system, as it allows players to play the game in two ways that don't really mesh well. Usually half the server drops into high action zones to have a quick firefight, die, and then re-queue for another game. This is fine for them, but the rest of the server is often left with a massively reduced player population, and the action becomes slow and boring. Having fixed spawn points around the perimeter of a map is a good way to get players to spawn with less clumping, but also good incentive to move towards the map center right away. Playing the latest Battle Royale 2.0 in Warface offers a similar spawn system to what I've described, and although it's not a flawless game experience, it ensures that by the end of the game there are a significant number of players on somewhat equal footing for more interesting and fair firefights. The action is also paced pretty well and ensures that if you're looking for it, you can have multiple engaging and fun firefights leading up to the endgame. Now, what about the idea of starting players with guns? I've been actually surprised that not a lot of other Battle Royales have experimented with this concept. So far, the only Battle Royale style game that I've played where this is an option is Hunt Showdown, which isn't exactly a traditional Battle Royale, but it lets you bring a loadout into the game, meaning every player is a threat from the start. Nobody should be dying because they ran into a room that didn't have a gun, but their enemy did have one. The random chance equation can be fun at first, but it gets old once you start to take the game more seriously, and I'd love to see a Battle Royale with the balls to say, here's a rifle that you can spawn with. If you want a better one, go out and find one, but in the meantime, if somebody starts to shoot at you, you can at least shoot back and even the odds a bit more. Now, how about killing incentives? I think PUBG and Fortnite players forget from time to time is that this is actually a shooter game, and the objective, or at least one of the main things that makes shooter games fun, is shooting at other players. What we tend to see even at competitive levels of Battle Royale games is that killing other players is often the riskiest strategy if you're actually trying to win the game. It's a simple equation that every time you engage in a firefight, you're rolling the dice. If both you and your opponent are at equal skill and gear, then it's probably about a 50-50 chance that you're going to come out of it alive. You may also win, but alert someone nearby who's going to kill you when you go for the loot. Often it makes more sense to play sneaky and just avoid unnecessary engagements if you want to win, which you could argue as strategy, but I'd say it's fairly simple strategy and ultimately boring once you become more experienced. And the shooter fan in me resents that I'm constantly fighting between what's fun and what's smart. It's always more fun to fight other players, so why not reward players for doing so? That's what games are for, right? For actually having fun. And it's this reason alone why I think the Call of Duty Battle Royale may actually have an edge over some of the other games here, because they can integrate kill streaks to incentivize killing other players. What can Battlefield do to compete with this concept? Well, they have the new reinforcement system, which is basically kill streaks for Battlefield. A powerful tank or supply cache would be a nice reward for killing a bunch of enemies, and since it's already integrated to the base game of Battlefield, using it in Royale shouldn't be too hard. Now, even if you kill an enemy, but that player has used all their heals and ammo in the firefight and you don't really get a reward from it, you may have still earned enough points to call in a supply drop to rearm and heal up. But maybe you killed a whole squad and now you can call in a recon plane for scouting or a powerful vehicle. Players still have an option to play sneaky and make it to the end game, but they might be up against somebody with some pretty powerful kill streaks because they've been playing more aggressively and using their skill to get to the end game. And sure, you could argue that this trade-off is similar in current Battle Royale games, but you can still get fully upgraded gear without getting a single kill in PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. What if the best gear was reserved for players who were actually engaging in combat? Putting a bigger emphasis on combat and aggressive play as a realistic strategy for making it to the endgame would be a really nice change of pace. Now, what about playing with teammates? Obviously, there's a lot of cool teamwork ideas we could use from the Battlefield franchise to make squad play more interesting. Will there be classes in game? Will squad composition be important? Will you pick up or switch out kits as you find different gear? There's a lot of cool ideas that we can easily pull from what currently exists in Battlefield. However, my biggest gripe with team play in these Royale games is that most of them are around 23 to 30 minutes of playtime, and if you lose a friend early on, they just have to sit there and hang out while the rest of their friends try and win the game without them. Or, what is actually very common is that if a squad joins the game but they lose one or two of their members early on, instead of playing out the rest of the game, they'll just quit and start a new one so that they can all play together. This is a huge problem because when players quit, the action for everyone else gets really boring because there's less players on the battlefield to actually fight. How do you incentivize players to actually stay around even if they lose a teammate early on? You give them a chance that maybe they can get their teammate back at some point during the round. What if one of the kill streaks was the ability to paradrop a teammate back to your location? Sure, it sounds like it could be overpowered, but what would make it fair? Perhaps a 10 kill requirement for the squad to bring one teammate back? What if they were dropped in with almost no gear? Maybe the squad would have to share what they had and reduce the overall resources for each individual player. Regardless, I think it could be an easy way to solve the issue of squads dropping out while simultaneously encouraging combat. If you lose a player early on, stay in the game and play more aggressively. Maybe you'll get them back. Now, obviously, any battle royale out there can take these changes and use them to improve their game mode, but games like PUBG and Fortnite are already set in their ways. Making changes like this would drastically upset the current community and player base. Battlefield has the chance to do something different and make a game mode that appeals to, well, me, and I imagine probably a lot of other players out there who haven't yet jumped on the Battle Royale bandwagon, or maybe players who play PUBG and Fortnite but want a slightly different experience, or maybe a more tactical and fair experience. A Battle Royale game that implements all the things I've talked about in this video would definitely shake up the genre in a very substantial way and take that basic formula but turn it into something that the other games don't offer. And I think that's what you have to do as a game developer these days, is not just make a small innovation, but make a large innovation. That's what excites the community. The market is so saturated with slight innovations on currently existing genres. Let's do a much bigger innovation. Let's change things up. I hope DICE has got what it takes to really change up the Royale genre, and I can't wait to find out more about this game mode. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. What ideas or game concepts would you like to see improve the Royale genre? And I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.